Papa-palooza 2024 here with Matt and Mike, and we're going to continue on with the rushing props here for Super Bowl 58. And with that, you can't talk rushing props without Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey, 18 games played, and he averaged 91.5 rushing yards with a median actually higher than that at 94 yards for Christian McCaffrey over the course of the season. He had a low on the year. His low was still 43 yards, and that was, again, in that weird game against Cleveland where nothing worked, injuries happened, all that. He only had 11 attempts in that game as well, in which he only gets to 43 yards. He did have a 45-yard game as well. I will point that out. That was in a loss to the Vikings, also in that stretch where they were not playing very well. However, he also had a 152-yard game. That was the first game of the season, 22 carries versus the Steelers. He had a 145-yard game, 116, 115, 114, 106, 103. Lots of triple-digit rushing totals on Christian McCaffrey's game log.
There are a lot of them, and he projects to get quite a few carries in this spot as well. We talked about this Chiefs defense, the weakness here against the run. We didn't see Baltimore exploit that. I would expect you're going to see Kyle Shanahan and this San Francisco 49ers offense take big shots with them against the run. I think McCaffrey's day is incredibly busy. This is one of the props that's already in my account. I played over 89.5 minus 115. We see that juice up to minus 125 on the over. If you want this one, this is 100% a bet now. The closer we get to game, the higher this is going to go. My guess is we get up to minus 140 or so, and then all of a sudden we see 90.5. By kickoff, I wouldn't be shocked if we're around 92.5 for the McCaffrey over prop. He's gone over his prop last two playoff games as well. To me, he is the sure thing here is he gets carries for this 49ers offense, and if he gets 15, 16 carries against this Chiefs defense, which doesn't mind giving up 5-6 yards a pop, they just want to limit the big play and make you march down the field. I think McCaffrey has a big day.
11 overs of the 89.5 over the course of the year, and one of the unders was an 85-yard performance for Christian McCaffrey, so got over a ton of times on the season. I think I'm on the opposite side of you here with this one. And this is another one of the ones that I have circled to wait and check out what this number ends up at to come in on an under, mainly for the reason I think that the defensive strategy is the same with McCaffrey that it is for Kelsey, which is we're going to sit here and we are not going to let Christian McCaffrey run all over us. And guess what? Brock Purdy, if you want to throw to the outside against our corners that are awesome, and by the way, you have been a turnover-worthy play machine here over the last half of the season, go right ahead. Christian McCaffrey gets at least all the attention early. Now, he might still... It's not like Christian McCaffrey isn't going to get his anyway, right? I just think that I'm like you. If you want the over, you need to bet it the second you're hearing us talk right now, because
this is going nothing but up.
I think this one is the biggest mover between now and kickoff. It would not surprise me if this is mid-90s by the time that we kick off, because Christian McCaffrey is going to be a very popular over. He's a very popular player, and people are going to look, and they're going to see, they're not going to be intimidated by when this goes to 90.5. They're not going to be intimidated when this goes to 91.5. I don't think anybody gets scared off until this gets to kind of the mid-90s, and so I think we kind of see a one-way traffic all the way up to about 94.5, 95.5.
The other part of this is I don't think people go back on the under. I don't think you're going to be once it gets to 94.5, people may start passing on it.
Yeah.
But you're only going to see professional money to the under at that point, where certain people will say, okay, I'm willing to come in and take the under. You're not going to see recreational players come in and say, well, now it's at 94.5. I like the over 89.5, but I'm going to play under 94.5.
Right. And with this too, we talk about the splash plays that this offense just has in general. Same thing with McCaffrey. His 17.5 line for longest rush, he got there 11 times as well over the course of the season. So another guy, and in two different games, his long rush was 16 yards. So the ones that he didn't get there, he missed it by 1.5 yards. And so again, McCaffrey, when he does get it and he gets the hole, not only is he really good, but he takes advantage of those lanes as well.
And that to me is why I like the over here. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a 30-yard run from McCaffrey. And if McCaffrey gets one rush for 30 yards, he's going to fly over this total. If he is able to get the splash play on the ground, I think he goes over. And I agree with you. You go in there saying we're going to take away McCaffrey. But the problem is the amount of weapons that you have on this San Francisco offense. It's a lot easier said than done to go in and say we're going to take away the McCaffrey running game. We're just going to stack the box. I agree you can trust your corners to a point, but you're still going to get those opportunities from McCaffrey. And I don't see Shanahan moving away from this running game anytime early in this game. And so if McCaffrey gets, like I said, that 16 or so carries, I think he has a very good shot at going over. The next two guys on the list I think are wildly interesting here. We got Deebo Samuel sitting there, 14.5 for his over-under rush yards, -120 to the over, and Brock Purdy sitting at 12.5, -110 to the over. Let's start with Deebo Samuel, someone who we both talked about taking the under against Detroit. He ends up getting 3 carries, which I was surprised by, that he got that much work coming off an injury. He went under his rushing total, so he was totaled at 8.5 there, only got to 7 yards on those 3 carries. I think Deebo's going to be a big part of this game plan. And if you're taking away the McCaffrey runs, the Deebo end around all of a sudden becomes a very, very dangerous play. I think he probably gets 3 carries in this game. I like the over on the 14.5 if he's able to get 3 rushes.
Yeah, I actually played over 11.5 Brock Purdy rush yards. It's sitting 12.5 right now. That's probably about the max. Like, listen, quarterback rush yards, you'll hear us talk about a yard here, a yard there, not that big deal. When we're talking about very few opportunities, then a yard, 2 yards makes a difference, right? And so Brock Purdy, I think 12.5 is about my max there that I would be willing to go with. But Brock Purdy, if you kind of go back and if you go back to his college days, he was fine with taking off. If you've seen over the last few weeks, specifically since, these are must-win games, obviously, with all that, he is taking advantage of rush lanes and rush opportunities. And the other thing is you are getting a Chiefs defense that plays a ton of man, and you're getting a bunch of times where these Chiefs are going to be getting a ton of pressure. Because remember, Chiefs very, very high in quarterback pressures this year. But what that can do is you get the pressure, and if they don't get home, creates running lanes as well. And so I think Brock Purdy, wouldn't surprise me if we see 3 or 4 different scrambles in this game. And so I liked him a lot on the rushing yards.
I like how you're thinking here on the rush over. You mentioned that offensive line for San Francisco. They got Trent Williams, who is all NFL, all world, and 4 turnstiles, right? So it's going to be tough to block this Kansas City defensive line. If you do get consistent pressure, I do think you're going to see Brock Purdy take off a couple of times. So I agree with you there with the Brock Purdy sitting at 12.5. The rushing attempts total sitting at 3.5, I think is dead on. It feels like it's going to be that between 2 and 5, which obviously averages out to 3.5. So not interested in going after the rush attempts. The other part of this is Purdy kind of found himself from a running perspective last game when it wasn't really all clicking. He wasn't able to throw the football as effectively as he wanted. He was able to run around and make some big plays with his legs. I think this game is close throughout. That leads me toward thinking that Brock Purdy will take off in a couple of those situations and use his legs as a positive. And if you are in man coverage against the San Francisco team, your back's going to be turned a lot of places because you got Ayuk who stretches the field, Kittle who stretches the field. You've got McCaffrey running these zigzag routes over the middle. It's tough to be able to then also follow the quarterback with your eyes.